Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I'm looking at the 2026 Senate map and looking at what I think are the best realistic scenarios for both the Republicans and the Democrats. I'll be doing the Republicans first in this video, then I'll have a part 2 coming out tomorrow where I go over the Democrats' best case scenario. In the 2026 Senate map right now, I have Republicans starting out with about 51 Senate seats projected to win in 2026. Democrats are favored in about 45, and I have 4 rated right now as purely toss-up. So what do I think the best case scenario is? Well, for starters, the best case scenario for Republicans likely includes them first winning back the state of Georgia. Now, Georgia, you may remember, was won back in 2020 by was won in 2020 by Jon Ossoff, the Democratic candidate, against Republican David Perdue. He won a very, very close race in Georgia, and in 2026, we're looking at a potential election of maybe Jon Ossoff going up against outgoing Republican Governor Brian Kemp. If he is a Republican candidate, it would be a very high-profile candidate Republicans could put up against Ossoff. If not, there are a lot of other potential Republican candidates as well, including Representative Buddy Carter, but it certainly seems like if Kemp runs, he would be the strongest candidate the Republicans have. In the Republicans' best case scenario for 2026, I think Kemp winning by more than 5% is not very likely, but I do think him winning by over 1% is certainly possible and something I could realistically see happening. So in the Republican best case scenario, Georgia goes for Brian Kemp. Now we have North Carolina, where North Carolina, this is Republican Senator Thom Tillis. He's up for re-election, and I'm very fascinated to see this one play out because in the best case scenario for North Carolina, it's actually interesting to see, will it be Thom Tillis or will another Republican try and primary him? I'm not really too sure, but he does have the support of a lot of senators already. Something I did notice, though, in both of Tillis' elections, he won in 2020 with 48.7% of the vote. And if you look back when he won in 2014, funny enough, you'll find he won with 48.82% of the vote. So none of the times Tillis has been on the ballot, he has won getting a majority of the vote. It's always been a plurality, meaning he's never gotten above 50%. So that is something very interesting. So for 2026, I think it is certainly possible Tillis could win this race. I'm very skeptical, though, given his electoral history and his approval ratings. I'm not sure he gets more than 50%. But in the Republicans' best case scenario, this race could certainly still say Republican, likely under 5%, but over 1%. This would put Republicans at 53, Democrats at 45. Now we're going to go to the state of Maine. This is where Susan Collins, the Republican senator, is up for re-election. This one, I think, of all of them is the most realistic at staying right at the Republican level. Maine did vote for Kamala Harris in the 2024 presidential election. Maine statewide voted for Harris over Trump by about 7%, 52% to 45%. But back in 2020, on the same time Donald Trump lost in Maine, Susan Collins won 51% to 42.4%. So Collins does have a track record of winning the same time as a Democrat won the state at the presidential level. As for the background of this race, Susan Collins will likely be facing off against either outgoing Governor Janet Mills or Representative Shelley Pingree or Representative Jared Golden or Troy Jackson, the former president of Maine Senate. This is certainly going to be a relatively well-known Democratic challenger against Collins, but I still think, given what Collins was able to do back in 2020, Collins would be, in the Republicans' best-case scenario, favored to win. The question is what the margin would be. 2026, you could argue that it's going to be a more Democratic year than most, so maybe it would only be a lean win for Susan Collins, but I think her winning in the likely Republican column, in the Republican best-case scenario, is certainly very attainable. We have one more remaining toss-up seat, that is the Senate seat in Michigan. And the main reason Michigan, I think, could be potentially competitive is for what we saw in 2024. Michigan right now, it's two-term Democratic Senator Gary Peters, who was reelected in 2020 with 49.9% of the vote. So he also did get under 50% of the vote very barely, which means it likely will be a competitive election. The one optimistic sign potentially for the Republicans was in 2024. Elisa Slotkin just defeated Republican Mike Rogers 48.6% to 48.3%, only a 0.3% difference on the same ballot when Donald Trump won Michigan statewide. So at very least, that gives the potential where Michigan, if everything goes right for the Republicans and the Republicans have a better than expected night, Republicans could potentially maybe make a play and narrowly win the state of Michigan by under 1% at the Senate level. Now, this is absolutely a best case scenario situation here. I don't think Michigan at the end of the day goes to a Republican in the Senate race. I do think Gary Peters wins re-election, but in a best case scenario, seeing Michigan go red is something I'm certainly wouldn't be surprised by if Republicans really did amazing, but not something I'm predicting anytime soon. Republicans right now have 55, Democrats have 45. I have one Senate seat that is left that I think could potentially, in the Republicans' best case scenario, get very competitive and maybe even flip, and that is the state of New Hampshire. And my thought process here is the state of New Hampshire. This is Democratic incumbent Senator Jeanne Shaheen. She's up for re-election and has not yet decided whether or not she will run for another term, but she has filed the paperwork to do so. The one bit of optimism Republicans have in New Hampshire is they seem to have a very strong candidate in Scott Brown, the former U.S. Senator from Massachusetts, who ran for this race back in 2014. Brown, of course, just moved up from Massachusetts to New Hampshire to run for that race, and he still only lost by 3.2%. At the presidential level in 2024, New Hampshire, despite not being really a swing state in 2020, voted for Harris over Trump 51% to 48%, only a 3% win. And we did also see, at least in the governor's map, Kelly Ayotte won by 10% in the governor's race, a much bigger margin than was expected. So Republicans seem to have a bit of a resurgence in 2024 in the state of New Hampshire. Does that automatically mean that's going to transfer to 2026? No, it doesn't. But getting a high-profile Republican top recruit going up against a Democratic senator, at least it spells the eyes of a potentially competitive race. Right now, I would start this race out as Shaheen against Brown as a lean Democrat. Yes, Shaheen has been very, very tough to beat in New Hampshire. She's probably the best Democratic candidate in the entire state of New Hampshire. But it's worth noting Scott Brown is probably one of the top 3 best Republican candidates in New Hampshire as well. And I think this would be a very competitive race. In the Republicans' best case scenario, though, I could actually see New Hampshire going red for Scott Brown by under 1%. This is, in the best case scenario, super, super close. Back in what I think is going to happen, I would be very surprised if this race did end up going red. I think New Hampshire with Jeanne Shaheen would still probably be a lean Democratic win. But I don't think it's really too unrealistic on the same night where Michigan is going red at the Senate level to see New Hampshire going red as well. So I think in the Republicans' best case scenario, 56 Senate seats is certainly possible. Not anywhere near what I'm predicting to happen, but I do think it is certainly possible. As for some of the margins in some of the other states, in a best case scenario, I could see Minnesota getting under 5. I could see New Jersey getting under 15 and in between 5 to 15. Virginia, I could see, if Glenn Youngkin were to run, getting under a 5% win for the Democrats. Colorado, I don't think moves that much, but New Mexico, I could see going under 5 as well. And maybe Illinois would be like under 15 on the Democratic side. Oregon, I don't see much movement. Massachusetts and Rhode Island, I don't see much movement either. Maybe you could argue Rhode Island gets under 15, but I wouldn't really put too much stock in that. So Republicans start off at about 56, Democrats 44 in their best case scenario. I hope you enjoyed this video, and make sure to come back for tomorrow's video, which will be a Democratic Senate best case scenario for that one. So I hope you come back for that. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you in a future video. That will do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to give it a like. And if you really liked it, please remember to click the subscribe button. And make sure you turn post notifications on so you always get notified when I post a new video. That way you never miss one. Also, please remember to share this video with your friends and family if you really, really, really like the video. And remember to stay tuned because I'll be posting at least one video every single day leading up until Election Day. So I'd really appreciate it if you keep coming back and watching those videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video.